Insights into legacy. Issues of handover from a partner-initiated project. Research conducted by University of Nottingham. Researchers Emily Thorn, Jocelyn Spence, Boriana Koleva and Stephen Benford. Researchers rarely learn what happens to their projects after they are handed over to partners. We have the pleasure of building on the findings of previous studies by discussing a long-term design engagement that neither started nor ended as a research project. We were approached by the Interpretation and Community Engagement Officer, ICEO, of Neenscape, a temporary UK landscape partnership scheme with the mandate to increase community engagement within the local area and its history. The ICEO had previously attended a workshop organised by us that promoted aesthetic visual markers called art codes. Art codes builds on the D-Touch approach that recognises topological structures in images. People can draw aesthetic and meaningful codes by following a simple set of rules. The ICEO wanted us to provide technology-based knowledge exchange activities that would support their bid for funding from the UK's Heritage Lottery Fund. We set about on this project in 2016 as a knowledge exchange partner rather than conducting research. We discuss here how this developed and what we learned over 4 phases spanning 6+ years that this project has run at point of writing. The unusual part was that the project grew and responsibility was shared in a non-linear, stakeholder-led way that we have not seen explicitly described in the literature. We describe this paper as an investigation of Neenscape as a case study for understanding the shifts in skills, responsibilities and engagement in a community-driven, location-based design installation. We draw our data from years of active and embedded participant observation. Again, we had not anticipated to be conducting any research in this project. However, our roles shifted as the phases progressed, starting as a facilitator first, when the lead author explained the mechanism of the technology to be used to the participants. As the participants decided what they wanted to do with it, we then offered technical support, landing at the end as friendly outsiders. We consider and examined the underlying stakeholder relationships that evolved over time and therefore changed what was created. The project was complex, growing to involve many stakeholders, evolving in response to their various interests, ultimately creating 5 public experiences using art codes-based technology platform we built, all while accommodating the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. To explain the graphic here, the project is split into 4 phases. Phase 1, the project proposal and initial pilot activity 2016 to 17. Phase 2, our team being commissioned to deliver a public installation and building a content editor for the community to contribute their own experiences 2017 to 19. Phase 3, different stakeholders extending our initial experience and developing new ones 2019 to 22. Phase 4, the funded Neenscape project drawing to a close and planning its legacy while the community continues to develop further experiences, 2022 onwards. 23 stakeholders who were directly involved in delivering 5 projects using our technology platform. The outer circles represent the projects that we discuss later. The smaller solid circles inside these represent the stakeholders, growing or shrinking based on their level of engagement in the project at each phase. Phase 1. The collaboration began with a pilot project in which we led workshops to form an initial project idea. This involved local council members, historical society volunteers, museum volunteers, a Northamptonshire history professor, local artisans, and of course the Neenscape organising team. Our role was to introduce the technology, point out where opportunities might lie, and help keep ideas grounded and realistic. The outcome of the pilot project was to identify an initial project to deploy art codes along the public footpath that followed the route of a disused railway, running between the town of Rushden and the new development of Rushden Lakes, with the aim of engaging the public with the heritage of the area. The collaboration was community-led and funded, and driven on our part by the desire to deliver impact rather than explore specific research questions. Phase 2. Delivering a first public experience and content editor. The yellow circle, all aboard for Rushden. Once the footpath and project was identified, the stakeholders decided to focus on an event that happened on a nearby stretch of that railway in September 1911. This event was the basis for our app and the interactions with the art codes. The app was titled All Aboard for Rushden. Artwork was commissioned by a local artist seen in the top right images. Physical signposts were installed along the walkway, and the app was built and launched, along with a content editing tool. We show some examples of this in the next slide. The blue circle, Boot Project. Neenscape was also working with the tourism agency Destination River Valley to promote the heritage of the local shoe industry, especially that of the Doc Martin Company, famous for their boots. In response, a local artist created a giant boot sculpture for Northampton Borough Council. See the bottom left image. 6 of the images on the boot are art codes, which when scanned deliver information about things to do and see in the local area. Following various temporary exhibitions, the boot is currently housed at the Rushden Historical Transport Society. These are screenshots of the app from left to right. 1. A user needed to collect a digital ticket and enter in their start destination. 2. Once an art code was scanned, the ticket was punched, much as a conductor would have done while passing through the carriage to check tickets. 3. One of the letters lost from the railway incident would be opened. 4 and 5. This triggered historical content and video. Although our contracted involvement was near its end in Phase 2, the stakeholders needed a far easier way of updating the app and creating new experiences. We therefore developed an online editing tool and trained key stakeholders to use this. The bottom 2 images are screenshots from this tool covering setting up a new experience, configuring what happens when specific art codes are scanned, and editing text for reward schemes. The community develops their own experiences. The yellow circle, All Aboard for Rushden, was extended. We supported the community to create a further 6 art code signs and to use the editor to create further content to extend All Aboard for Rushden. The top right image shows the final locations of the 5 initial stops that we delivered in yellow pins and the 6 further ones that the community created in the dark blue pins. The purple circle indicates the John Clare project. Neenscape was already supporting an ongoing project to address the heritage of the local 19th century poet John Clare and introduced our art codes technology to its stakeholders, leading to the idea of establishing a separate John Clare trail. The subsequent development brought together community members who combined their own original music, poetry, creative writing, and acting in an experience to encourage visitors to contemplate John Clare's local landscape by interacting with new art codes. This experience is portable, and to date it has been deployed at 4 locations spanning a 40-kilometre stretch of the river and continues to be a live project. See the bottom right image. The orange circle, All Change. Together with the charitable arm of a local stately home and an MA student in contemporary art and archaeology from another university, Neenscape is working to develop a new approach to the interpretation of archaeology, moving away from traditional research papers towards more interactive digital methods of exhibiting findings to the public. At the time of writing, the details of this project are still developing. The dark green circle, the wetlands. Members of the River Wetlands Nature Reserve, part of the Wildlife Trust, saw the art code sign deployed in the area and approached Neenscape about the idea of developing an app to enable visitors to document wildlife that they spotted. Using this web app, visitors and volunteers could scan an art code, see the bottom left image, that would record where in the reserve they were and invite them to log the animals they had seen. Phase 4. 2022 saw the Heritage Lottery Fund support for Neenscape come to its end, raising questions about the legacy of the project and whether and how the community and stakeholders might continue to work with our technology in the future. This poses a major challenge as several projects are either still in development or in the early stages of deployment. The Neenscape management team drew up a formal legacy plan for the project covering physical legacy, digital legacy, and knowledge and skills. The plan identifies the physical legacy of the project as comprising 16 art code signs. A particular challenge here is the distributed nature of the responsibility, which spanned both public authorities and private landowners. The digital legacy of the project included the ArtCodes app, which needs to be updated and maintained on both the Apple App Store and Google Play, as well as the bespoke editor tool, CMS, and existing content that needs to be hosted and maintained. Beyond the actual physical and digital assets, the handover of the knowledge and skills required to make them is essential. You can see by the 23 stakeholders and 5 projects, these handovers were key and complicated. On the one hand, the project has enjoyed successes, engaging a network of stakeholders with the technology who've created a series of projects inspired by our initial public experience of All Aboard for Rushden. On the other, these projects face an uncertain future as the period of public funding draws to a close, and it is currently unclear who can continue to develop them or who has the responsibility and capacity to maintain what has already been achieved. We went back to question the nature of the handover process, which in turn has raised 6 key considerations for future projects. 1. Engage a diverse network of stakeholders through a core community partner. When discussing such projects, it is tempting to talk about handing over technology to the community, as if the community were some clearly identifiable and coherent entity to whom things can directly be handed over. Our experience reveals that this is far from the case. Our community comprised of a network of entities of different types, which in turn made the handover especially complex. Having Needscape as the core community-facing organisation dedicated to engaging the wider community was key. 2. Individual relationships are key to successful handover. Although on paper it looks as though handover goes between institutions and organisations, handovers in practice, it's often the individuals within those that are likely to take a personal or professional interest in the project. People leaving or moving jobs may not on the surface appear to make a difference, but within the legacy of the project, that takes a big blow. 3. Address the sustainability challenges of physical handovers. The challenges of physical legacy arising from the upkeep of the ArtCode sign came as more of a surprise. We had no idea that by the end of the project, our 11 signs along the river would be split among multiple local authorities and landowners, which caused considerable difficulty in the handover process. Evidently, handing over physical technologies may become especially complex in projects that cover large geographical areas and span administrative boundaries and/or public and privately owned places. 4. Draw up formal legacy plans. Drawing up a formal legacy plan that explicitly articulated these goals was a positive development that helped make these goals clear to all stakeholders, including ourselves. It is perhaps no coincidence that a heritage project such as this recognised the importance of legacy and handovers. Such projects are naturally aware of the importance and challenges of preservation, including digital resources, one perhaps the HCI community could learn from. 5. Communities managing their own funding rebalances power and responsibility. Even in the most ideal participatory design or action research projects, research interests tend to drive the aims and general direction of the work. And this is strongly tied to the researchers holding the funding, which inevitably means holding a large degree of power to shape the direction of the engagement. Our project was different in that initial proposal writing and the management of funding lay with the community partners rather than ourselves. 6. Knowledge exchange as agile iteration rather than a linear pipeline. Needscape is hardly the only HCI project in which impact preceded research, and it will certainly not be the last. Indeed, a swathe of practice-led approaches that falls under the broad umbrella of research through design involves research emerging from practice to varying degrees. This project has yielded insights into challenges of technology handovers and legacy in community projects, delivering these 6 considerations for future projects in the HCI community.